We have a really great panel planned for you guys tonight, and we have a really strong diversity of showing here to talk about crowdfunding and what we're doing here to help companies in that space. The first off, I wanted our CEO, Dave, to give us a quick kickoff here, describing a little bit about what Indiegogo is, because I think that our conversation will revolve a bit around Indiegogo and crowdfunding in general, so it would be good to help you guys understand what we do.
Hi, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Oh.
Yes.
Really into the mic? How about like this?
Is that better? Yeah, that's better. Maybe that's not better. Let me put that back there. Okay, let me try it one more time. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It is so great to be in Shenzhen, I have to say. It's my first time, not just in Shenzhen, but in China. I'm having the time of my life. I hope that doesn't change tonight. Let's see how it goes. So, super quick on Indiegogo. By the way, did you see the way we took control of the panel? Did you hear the way Sandy said, because we've got a few great panelists here, and Sandy said it's going to be mostly about Indiegogo. So we just want to set this standard really clearly. So this is our mission around here, or at Indiegogo. Indiegogo, we operated in the crowdfunding space for a while, but we've talked for the last 2 years, really, we developed our mission to really empower people to unite around the ideas that matter to them and together make those ideas come to life. And it's really about the uniting. Our passion at Indiegogo is about bringing together people from different geographies, people that otherwise would not have been able to connect with each other, and to enable them to together make things come to life. And then part of that is backing and actually funding a campaign, but part of that also is helping the entrepreneurs on Indiegogo with manufacturing or fulfillment or design manufacturing or marketing or other things that entrepreneurs need to ultimately be successful. We're trying to empower entrepreneurs to unite with those that can really help them take their idea all the way from concept to market. Indiegogo actually invented the modern crowdfunding industry. I heard somebody that was up here earlier was saying, if you're gonna launch on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or Kickstarter. Can't believe all this Kickstarter talk still. Indiegogo actually invented the crowdfunding industry. Indiegogo launched over 10 years ago. At the time, there was no Kickstarter. There weren't other crowdfunding platforms. It was the goal of our founders to make it easier for entrepreneurs and others to raise money from the people that would ultimately be their customers. Since that time, over $1.5 billion has been raised on Indiegogo. And that's money that's been raised not from people going out and finding investors and making those pitches and trying to get an investor excited about it, or having to meet somebody that knows an investor and going to have a meal that ends up being a waste of time. That's $1.5 billion from entrepreneurs that just shared their story with the world and were able to get customers for the first time without having to convince anybody and without having to give up any ownership stake in their company. So Indiegogo is a platform that we're really excited about in the way that it enables entrepreneurs to pursue their passions and raise the money to really make things come to life. One other one, we've had over 15 million contributors on Indiegogo. That's 15 million people from over 230 countries that have backed projects. From, like I said, over 230, 235 countries and territories. This is the one metric I just want to highlight really quick, and then I'll turn over the microphone so we can talk more with the other panelists about Indiegogo. Over 40% of Indiegogo transactions are cross-border. That means that over 40% of the time that somebody's backing something on Indiegogo, they're backing somebody from another country. This is why we're so excited about what's happening here in China, and we'll talk about that more. But Indiegogo turns out is a very useful platform for companies that are based here in China to reach backers in the United States that maybe haven't heard of the brand before, haven't heard of the product, but are willing to move forward and back a project from a company or a brand or founders that they've never heard of before. And that's it. Okay?
Great, thank you so much, Dave, for the introduction there. So that's pretty much it. That's all we're going to talk about Indiegogo for tonight. And the rest of this panel, we're going to focus on 3 other things. The first one is you're going to learn a little bit more about us. I think that through our backgrounds and the things that we do, you're going to learn a little bit more about what this ecosystem entails. And then secondly, we're going to dive into a little bit around trends that are happening in the hardware space in China, as well as just high-level trends in general. And then the last topic we'll cover is just crowdfunding and how you can use crowdfunding to launch overseas and accomplish other goals that you have. So to kick things off, just so you know who you're talking to, why don't we go around and everyone's give 1 to 2 sentence maximum introduction of your background and what you do. So I'll start here. My name is Sandy Diao. I focus on global growth for Indiegogo, and my job is to help companies launch from the Chinese market into the overseas markets. Previously, I ran my own hardware startup, and I also worked at Pinterest.
Hi, I'm Dave Mandelbrot again. I'm the CEO of Indiegogo. My job is to empower people to make their ideas come to life. Isn't that great? Before I was at Indiegogo, I was at Yahoo for about 7 years, where I built a lot of Yahoo's biggest media properties, Yahoo Finance, News, Sports, and other things. And before that, just so you know just how old I am, I was at Netscape, which created the first. There's a little bit of applause. All right, yeah, let's hear it for Netscape. Or is that just applause that at my age I'm still able to do this, to both travel to China and speak on a panel? Yeah, I was at Netscape where we brought the first web browser to the world.
Hi guys, I'm Raggy. I'm the co-founder and managing director at Cowise. Cowise is a crowdfunding agency based in Shenzhen. We exist a little bit more than a year and have helped startups in Shenzhen raise more than $9 million US dollar on crowdfunding.
Hi guys, I'm Brian Hirsch. I worked at Umi where we launched the most successful smart home crowdfunding campaign, raising over 1.7, almost 1.8. So I'm here to lend some expertise on the in-house side of everything. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much for the brief introduction. So now we're going to dig into some of the topics here. So the first one is just going around here very quickly. What's a cool product that you've seen come out of Shenzhen or China recently that you want to talk about? And anyone can start.
So I think the maker community here in Shenzhen is, I can easily say it's the biggest of the world. And recently we helped some couple makers go on crowdfunding that also went pretty successful. But I think the maker, the creativity, the community here in Shenzhen is really, really different than the other sides of the world.
Yeah, I agree with that. In Shenzhen we see a lot of hardware developing very quickly. I think for me, I'm kind of a sucker for drones, so I'm just most excited about the drone tech coming out.
And I've been really excited about the products that are really utilizing not just great technology, but also great design. I had the pleasure of meeting with somebody from Low-Free earlier today. As everybody in Indiegogo knows, I'm really excited about Low-Free's products. Low-Free is incorporating really good design into Bluetooth speakers and keyboards and other things that make the products not only really useful, but actually really beautiful to look at. And it's been really exciting for us at Indiegogo to help Low-Free build a brand in the United States.
Great, and I'll quickly answer that question. I'm really excited by the development of AI integrated speakers, and I think that the China market has been really fast to market with offering really advanced AI speakers. So sort of on that note, one company that is actually developing an AI speaker is Xiaomi. If you've been watching the news, Xiaomi is estimated to have in the coming months a $10 billion IPO in the Hong Kong stock market. $10 billion for a company that primarily, as of now, sells hardware. Of course, still has other services, but we think of sort of as a hardware potential unicorn. So on that note, I'd love to hear, from the standpoints where all of you guys are as marketing agents, as other hardware companies, and even as a platform owner. What are your initial reactions to this? Do you feel confident about this? What does it make you feel like is indicative of the hardware industry?
So just a bit about my background. So I'm a Dutch-born Chinese. I lived there for more than 25 years. Then I've been in China for 3 to 4 years now. So if I look back, if I go back to Holland now, like it's like going back to the time. Hey, there's no WeChat Pay. Hey, there's no Alipay. And hey, there's no ecosystem of, for example, Xiaomi. So in terms of like innovation, I think China is really rising right now.
Yeah, I think it's reflective of two things. One is, in the United States, the company that has the highest market cap, or the most valuable company in the United States is Apple. And it's just a reflection of the incredible value that hardware companies are creating, and therefore the incredible value that they're able to get from the public financial markets. The second thing that I think it's really a reflection of is the worldwide economy that we live in now. Apple, the most successful company in the United States, of course, is doing most of its manufacturing here in China, and it's incredible to see Xiaomi, a company that's based here, able to take their products throughout the world and build an incredible value. If nothing else, I think for all of the many entrepreneurs here that are focused on building hardware products, it gives you something to shoot for.
Yeah, I think for me with that speaker, what I notice most about it is the industrial design. I think what we're seeing now is Chinese companies are not just developing products that function well, but also start to be more aesthetically pleasing, which is something I'm very excited about.
Great, and just going off that a little bit, Xiaomi is such a large company, so much potential cash flow and so much brand. Why do you think that Xiaomi is not putting a more concerted effort into markets like the United States? Or what do you see as sort of this inhibiting factor, maybe not even for Xiaomi, but for even more Chinese brands that have such great products, as you said, that have this like worldwide design appeal? What are some of the barriers you think that these companies are facing as they're thinking about entering potentially the US and the Western markets?
I think one of the biggest barriers is marketing. When you're marketing in the East and you're marketing in the West, they're very different audiences. And I think we're starting to see a bit of a bridge. People like Nashin are working to do that. But I think that's something we'll see over the next few years as Chinese companies understand how to market to the West a little bit more.
As for me, I actually worked as a performance marketeer at OnePlus here in Shenzhen also. So a lot of Chinese companies, yes, OnePlus. A lot of Chinese companies, they refuse to go to the US because of patents. I think you guys also know that Huawei, CTE, they cannot go to US. But for example, Huawei is really, really successful in Europe right now.
I do think a lot of it has to do with marketing. I think to market products in the US or other places in the Western world, it requires very different marketing. I think also it's a reflection on the way products were brought to new markets historically, where you needed to set up an entire distribution chain for every market that you were entering. So you needed to find a distributor in that market, a retailer in that market. That could be really hard as a brand that's unfamiliar in the market that you're trying to enter. It's one of the things that's been, frankly, really exciting for us at Indiegogo is to be able to actually sort of eliminate the middlemen and make it easier for companies any place in the world to reach an audience any other place in the world very effectively.
And to add to that, I think one of the differences I see is that in the Chinese market, when you're thinking about making a new product, oftentimes that decision-making process can be very tops-down data-driven. So for instance, if Xiaomi's thinking about a new product to make, they might look at the market data and say that, oh hey, I think that this mature category or this category is where I can capture the most potential sales and go for a market share grab. Whereas in the United States, the creation of hardware can sometimes be a lot more solutions-oriented. So you say, I see this problem around me and I see that I could potentially solve it with a hardware product, and then you sort of grow bottoms up, starting with your community. So it's really, you know, two very different strategies, and I think that, you know, to everything that our panelists have already said, building that bottoms up creates a lot of marketing, a lot of sort of going into foreign overseas barriers to entry. So thanks so much for sharing all of that insight.
I have one thing to add. So I also use Xiaomi products, and it's pretty interesting when you look inside their app. You see people, they bought 20, 30, maybe even more Xiaomi products. So in terms of marketing, that means the lifetime value of a customer is, for Xiaomi, is incredibly high. So that's why they produce cell phones at margin or maybe even low margin and sell that. So that's kind of like an opening for their ecosystem.
Great, and I think this is actually a great segue into a little bit more higher level discussion about cross-border in general. So everyone here on the panel has worked in different environments, whether in Silicon Valley in the United States or in Shenzhen here. So I'd love to touch on that a little bit. Starting with Dave. You know, you've been in Shenzhen for just 2 days, but you know, you've already shared your amazement at what's happening around you, and I know you visited a factory for the first time today. I'd love for you to give a quick digest on what you're feeling and what you're seeing.
Yeah, you know, it's been just amazing to be here in Shenzhen. I was talking to one person I met today about this. You know, as I mentioned, I got very involved with the internet very early on, actually. Like I said, I joined Netscape in, I think, 1996, and I started at Yahoo in 1999. And at the time, there was this incredible enthusiasm about this new medium. You know, we were just, you know, starting to scratch the surface about, you know, I remember the excitement when we first used email, actually, and it was just incredible that you could send a message from one office and have it received in another office, in the same place, and then using it, you know, to send messages to people worldwide, and then using the internet to get all kinds of information. But what was incredible at that time wasn't just how we were using the technology, but just the enthusiasm about what could be done. The enthusiasm about, you know, okay, now we can do this with this medium, and we can do that with the internet. And part of what's been so fun about being here in Shenzhen is to feel a similar kind of enthusiasm. We're seeing companies that are founded here in Shenzhen creating products that are very quickly reaching worldwide markets, and to get to meet people here and to talk to people at the factory that we visited and learn about how they're, you know, this factory here in Shenzhen is manufacturing products for Philips and for other, you know, major brands all around the world. It was just, it's exciting to hear the same enthusiasm that I remember from early on working in the internet. And in a way, it's even a greater enthusiasm because everybody takes a sense of pride in the products that they are creating. The company that we met with today showed us a number of products that are creating for a lot of brands, and there's that same kind of enthusiasm about what can be done that I remember from the early days of the internet, and it feeds our excitement, and you know, I hope everybody here that lives and works in Shenzhen can appreciate how wonderful it is to work in a place with this kind of excitement. You know, I don't know if anybody watches it here, but there's this show, you know, called Silicon Valley on HBO, which is all about what's going on in the Silicon Valley. But it's a reflection, in some ways, on how almost jaded everybody has become now. We're 20-something years into the internet, and everybody's starting to sort of become almost cynical about it. Here, there's still the excitement, and it's wonderful to be here and be a part of it.
Great, and I have another question for Raggy, but before that, I wanted to point your attention to Susan, who's standing in the middle. She has some papers in her hands, and she's gonna, if you have any questions that you want to ask later on, take a piece of paper from her. If you hear anything you want to ask more questions on, grab a piece of paper from her, and we'll do a Q&A at the end from this stack of papers. So, Raggy, so I know that you've been in Shenzhen for a little bit, and I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the changes that you find most interesting since you've started living here and doing business in Shenzhen?
Good question. So, to add to Dave's story of the factories, so we actually also work with a lot of factories. Factories, their profit margin is getting squeezed by big brands, Bose, Sony, etc. So a lot of factories right now, they currently bring out their own brand, and it's not just like, okay, I take future A from this, future B from this, and here I have a product. No, they really do user research, market research, and they come up with a product that will go to crowdfunding.
Great. And so another question I have here, so is, Raggy, I know you're building out your team. I think when you first came to Shenzhen, what have you learned about hiring talent? Because we all know that if you're doing cross-border or if you're trying to figure out how to reach customers across the world, you need talented people in marketing and creative in just about everything to deliver a product and a message to customers. What sort of advice or what sort of learnings have you gotten from that hiring process?
It's hard to hire in Shenzhen. If you want to hire great people, you need to pay a lot, of course. So that's why we also work with freelancers. And of course, just 30 minutes drive is Hong Kong. So we also work with Hong Kong freelancers.
I think that's a great tip here. Working with freelancers, I think, is a great way for you to minimize the amount of investment you have and just the general fees and costs. And so, great, thanks for sharing that. So I think my next question revolves around what you think the next opportunities in hardware are. And this, you can answer this in regards to like product or industries or even services. Having been in Shenzhen, Dave, although not too long, but what sort of opportunities do you see?
Okay, sure. By far the biggest opportunity that I see, for so long there's been this model where companies in the U.S. would build brands and they would work with manufacturers here in Shenzhen to manufacture the products for those brands that they were developing. The great opportunity that exists right now, and I really do think this is a unique point in time, is for manufacturers here in Shenzhen or startups here in Shenzhen to launch products from Shenzhen, companies that stay here in Shenzhen that can make those products popular across the world. The great change that we're seeing right now, and it's really happening uniquely at this point in time, is the ability for the manufacturer of a product to connect directly with the consumer in a way that they never could before. In the past, you were the manufacturer and you got a distributor and then a retailer and then that retailer sold to the customer. And not only was it complicated to bring your product to foreign markets, but because there were so many people sitting in between you and the customer, you couldn't connect with that customer. You couldn't get feedback about what they liked or didn't like about the product. When they returned product, you couldn't understand why they were returning it, because somewhere in that chain, that message was getting lost with the retailer or with the distributor or somebody else that was involved in that chain. So the big trend that I'm seeing now is this trend of manufacturers or startups here in China that are launching their products worldwide very quickly, much faster than was ever the case before. Because of platforms like Indiegogo and other forms of online marketing, you have the ability to reach consumers very quickly, get feedback, iterate, and continue to improve your products and your businesses.
Yeah, that makes me think of actually a product that was on the Indiegogo platform, where it was made by a manufacturer here in Shenzhen. It's a little cube that is a camera for your home, and then actually it was picked up by Xiaomi just a few months later. So I think what we're seeing is not just rapid development of hardware, but also kind of rapid development of these companies from small startup to shipping thousands, millions of units globally through these big brands.
To look at the bigger picture, not only manufacturing, I think in terms of AI, it doesn't matter whether it's in manufacturing or not, but all the VCs are now, if you're an AI company, they will invest in it. And that's what I see from my environment. And the second one is blockchain. I think till now we refused 5 blockchain companies to work with us because I don't have any knowledge with blockchain. But that's what I see around me. Those are the hot industries.
Great. I think this, unsurprisingly, we're starting to talk about like distribution, of products on the topic of cross-border. So, in regards to distribution, I think what's interesting is that a lot of companies, especially crowdfunding companies, first start their presence through digital. So they set up their Facebook page, they set up all their social media channels, get the word out, and then they launch the crowdfunding campaign or whatever else their launch mechanism is. And I want to talk a little bit about what is after crowdfunding and what is after that first initial launch. And for this question, panelists, you can talk a little bit about, offline perhaps, brick and mortar retail, or just other types of distribution for your products.
Yeah, I think there are actually a lot of new methods to sell, like we're seeing, not just sell, but develop communities like Indiegogo. But at Umi, what we also found were communities for reaching beyond that, like Target, and these big companies are running, so we're in the smart home space. So Target has an open house where they welcome these new innovative products that have been having successful campaigns on Indiegogo. They can then show their product to a larger audience. So I think that there's a community developing of new ways for these companies to expand. So
as an agency owner, also a lot of companies, they ask like, what should we do after crowdfunding? Basically, we also create websites for them, actually for no free. We create their e-commerce website, and we're getting a lot of organic sales, all from it's mostly all from the crowdfunding platform and the PR generated before. So it's mostly online, so that's e-commerce, and offline is retail. So then you work with distributors through US, Europe, etc.
Sandy works with me at Indiegogo. She knows I have a penchant for telling stories. Super quick story. So, and I promise it'll answer the question. It was so exciting, and I know this is going to sound like a pitch for Indiegogo, but we've seen this time and time again. Historically, a company, the typical way, different companies are different, but the typical way a company would launch the company is somebody has an idea, they go out and they raise money. If they were successful in raising money, they'd be able to start building a team. After you built a team, you were able to start building your product. After you built your product, you'd find distributors, retailers, like I mentioned before. All the way here at the end of the whole process, your product would show up on the shelf. And only at that time, after you've gone through all of those steps, would you find out if there was actually a market for your product. At the very, very end. Now you've got crowdfunding and other ways to reach your audience directly very early. So what happens? Very early in the life cycle of the product you're developing, potentially before you've raised funding, before you've gotten a distributor, before you've gotten a retailer, you have the chance to demonstrate that consumers are really interested in your product. And you're able to demonstrate it not from surveys, from them saying, yeah, I'd be willing to buy this product, but from them actually, I wouldn't say pulling out their credit cards, but I've learned nobody does that here in China. But you've had the opportunity to learn that way. And that's what we've seen on Indiegogo. you run a successful campaign on Indiegogo, instead of you, as the manufacturer, having to pitch the retailer on taking your product, it actually goes the other way around. If you go to Walmart's website, they have a multi-page template for how to pitch Walmart to take your product. What we've seen on Indiegogo is products are successful on Indiegogo, and the retailers go to the manufacturer and ask how they can get that product into their stores. And so, so what we're finding is, yes, it's definitely valuable to sell your product through online sales channels beyond your crowdfunding campaign. So definitely, setting up your own store and selling directly, but also getting into retail stores, which is much easier once you've demonstrated the success of your product through your crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah, you brought up something really great, which when we did our crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo, there was a time after we had finished the campaign, about a year and a half after, that we hadn't shipped our product. So we had this time to continue to iterate on our product and make it even better. And actually, the community that we made on Indiegogo allowed us to do that, because you don't just get funding, but you also find a lot of people who are interested in your product and really like the technology, and they can help you develop your ideas further. And I know we actually stuck features into our system completely from their suggestions.
Actually, to add to that, if you have a successful crowdfunding campaign, I'm pretty sure you guys will get emails from distributors. Yeah.
Just one quick example. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Cat-Ear headphones. Is anybody familiar with those? Yeah. It's okay, you be proud. Be a proud user of the Cat-Ear headphones. Cat-Ear headphones was two design students actually at UC Berkeley who developed a pair of a concept for a pair of headphones. They actually didn't even know how to manufacture headphones, in truth. They 3D printed the form factor of the headphones, ran their crowdfunding campaign. They're headphones that look like headphones because they're headphones, and they had two speakers on the top that were shaped like cat ears. So it looked like, they made you look a little bit like a cat. They also broadcast the music through the speakers on the top. Put them on Indiegogo. Who knew they raised $3.5 million in 2 months for their Cat-Ear headphones? Now they had a problem, which is they had no idea how to manufacture headphones. I picture them. There were two founders. They were both design students. I picture them saying, one of them saying to the other, hey, we raised this $3.5 million. How are we going to manufacture the headphones? And the other one said, I thought you knew how to do that. Amazingly, Brookstone, the retailer in the US, now owned by SunPower here in China, came to those two entrepreneurs and said, we saw you raise $3.5 million on Indiegogo. If you partner with us, we will manufacture those headphones for you so you can ship your headphones to all of your backers, and we will carry them in all of our stores. And now if you go into any of the 300 or 400 Brookstone stores throughout the United States and elsewhere in the world, they're carrying the second version of those Cat-Ear headphones. And those two entrepreneurs, they just had an idea. They never even manufactured their headphones. Brookstone picked that up for them, the manufacturing and the retailing. And I think all that those two founders are doing right now is cashing their royalty checks. Not bad.
Great, and to sort of mix that all up, one thing I think that people who are running companies can start looking forward to is the concept of new retail coined by Jack Ma from Alibaba. So new retail is this idea that there will be stronger O2O effects, online to offline, offline to online effects in all of your distribution and marketing channels in the future. So, as an example, in the United States, Amazon Go is testing a concept where you can go into the supermarket, a shop, and pick up what you need, purchase it without talking to any cash register or supervisor there, and just walk out with the product. And there are already stores like that here in Shenzhen. So I think that's something that we will very much be looking forward to building into our marketing strategies. So with that, I do want to take this opportunity to segue into our main topic here, which is crowdfunding. So I think that for the purposes of today's conversation, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of exactly the 1, 2, and 3 steps of how to crowdfund, but help you think more generally about how do I decide when I'm ready to crowdfund and what does it take. So I think to start off the panel here, everyone here comes from a bit of a different perspective in relation to crowdfunding. What is one area you would recommend to have ready before you even think about crowdfunding?
Your audience. You need to go into Indiegogo or any crowdfunding platform with your audience already ready in hand. We entered with a large mailing list we'd already built up, but if you go to Indiegogo, and it does happen, you can have a product that doesn't have an audience and goes in is wildly successful, but most of the successful companies already had an audience going in and already had the product most of the way finished.
I think indeed the audience is number one. I think the second one is prototype units. So those are mostly review units for PR. Otherwise you won't get into TechCrunch, The Verge, etc.
I absolutely agree with both of those. Definitely the audience or the email list. The best entrepreneurs on Indiegogo, they get off to a hot start, essentially. They start by just letting their friends and family and getting their friends and family, to provide their emails, to just, be aware when they launch. So they start getting traffic to their page, they start getting sharing of their page right away. You want to really use your community to build momentum early. All the best entrepreneurs on Indiegogo do that. I definitely agree on the prototype. In an effort to provide more transparency to users on Indiegogo, we now we require entrepreneurs on Indiegogo to say where they are in the life cycle of the product. And if you have a prototype, you're much more likely to get funding than if you don't have a prototype. And we validate that you do actually have a prototype if you say you do. And then the third thing is, I think it's really good to go in addition to having your audience already, in addition to having your prototype, definitely having thought through ahead of time your marketing strategy. How much are you willing to pay for your first customers, and what channels are you going to use to get them? Actually, marketing in different parts of the world is obviously very different, but it's worth thinking about how you keep that momentum going very early on. And the way I think about crowdfunding is not so much crowdfunding. What you're really doing is you're getting your first customers for that product. That's really what's happening through crowdfunding, and so it's worth investing in, because if you don't get your first customers, that's it. So it's really worth taking the opportunity to get those first customers. If you've got a great product, they'll become the evangelists that bring all of your customers after them.
So everyone here on the panel is advising that we build an email list and build a huge community. So my question to you all is, how do you do it? Where do you get the email addresses from? And how do you know when you have enough email addresses?
Facebook gives us all of them. Nobody's recording this, are they? Who wants to start?
We'll delete that part.
So actually at Cowise we have a few steps. So first one is discovery, and basically we have a call with the client, or we meet face to face to learn more about the client itself, the product, what kind of audience they want to target. And then after that, we enter two phases. One is preparation and one is pre-launch. In the pre-launch, it's basically building a landing page, shooting photos, copywriting the landing page, with a goal to drive traffic to it, and people, they need to leave their email address. So that's pre-launch, and at the same time, we will also help creators prepare for their crowdfunding. So what does that mean? That means PR. That means shooting the video. That means crafting the page, shooting better pictures, etc.
Raggy, I'm really glad that you mentioned pre-launch. Pre-launch is critical. It's a great opportunity. We have what we call at Indiegogo pre-launch pages. It's a great opportunity to start gathering emails from people early on. And one thing we encourage campaigners to do, without getting too much into the nitty-gritty, is to offer to utilize a pricing strategy where your earliest backers are getting the best price. And you can very easily set that up so you can enable only, so you can have only so many perks at the lowest price. And you tell people, if you want to get the lowest price on this product, and I've seen a lot of people in this room successfully deploy this strategy, sign up for our email so we can notify you when this product launches and you will get the best price. I'll share a little bit of inside research at Indiegogo. We researched why people back campaigns. And the main reason people back campaigns, of course, is because they want to get the product. And then the main reason that people do it during the campaign instead of waiting until the product is available, through traditional retail, because I thought, why do people take the risks, is that they believe, whether it's true or not, that by backing the campaign, they'll get a lower price than they would get if they wait until the product is at retail. And if that's why backers are backing the campaign, it's good to actually do that for your backers. For your first customers, it's worthwhile to let them pay a lower price and build that additional momentum. And you can gather email addresses with by providing backers the incentive to share that email in exchange for that lower price on the product.
Got it. So it sounds like I've got to build this community, get these first customers and first backers. But what are the costs associated with that? It sounds like I have to run some sort of advertising, marketing. What else should companies who are crowdfunding consider in terms of the costs that they should expect associated with running a campaign?
Well, I can speak from a campaign. We'd initially set a goal of 50,000 US dollars. Of course, we ended up getting quite a bit more than that. So what we found was that we rapidly needed to expand our team to communicate with backers. So there's actually, I think a lot of people go into a crowdfunding campaign thinking of it as maybe writing a book where you prepare everything, you've edited it, and then you put it out, and that's it. But it's actually an ongoing process. It's more like putting on a play where you need to be active the entire time. So I think understanding that if you're being prepared to be successful and having the team ready to expand is good preparation.
I totally agree. As for the advertising budget, I would recommend an internal goal, and let's say around 10% of that internal goal. For example, I think a lot of you guys are from marketing background, so you want to hit the public goal. For example, let's sell a product and the public goal is 20K, but let's say your internal goal inside the company is 100K. That means a rough guess, your advertising budget should be 10K US dollars.
I think that's good guidance.
Great. So I want to touch on this notion of this discount for early backers and early supporters. So I think one thing that hardware companies struggle with is figuring out how much of a markdown can I give on my product, because you have your base BOM cost, but on top of that you have your logistics fees, you have your shipping fees, and maybe you also want to account for other things such as credit card transaction fees, all sorts of refunds and returns, all sorts of reasons you want to factor into that margin calculation. Plus the fact that when you distribute with any other third parties, you'll have to give them a margin as well. So in terms of discounting your products, what do you recommend as good practices?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really important is like Sandy said, you really want to figure out all of the costs that are associated with developing your products. It's really nice that Umi's been so successful in developing their products. For a long time, it was the case that companies that came in way over their crowdfunding goal were actually less likely to deliver, because the challenges of manufacturing a lot more products were more than a lot of companies were actually ready for. And some of the companies, frankly, would have been more successful if they limited the total number of perks so that they could make sure to deliver that first batch. And I bring it up just to say, I think Sandy's right. I think it's worth planning to planning all of the costs that are associated with developing the products. In terms of deciding on the discount, I think that's actually a hard question to answer. The reality is, with very few exceptions, almost nobody is paying the recommended, the MSRP, the manufacturer's suggested retail price. That price, often like the crowdfunding goal, frankly, is a marketing tactic. So really what you want to do is you want to just decide on a pricing strategy. You want to get to what you ultimately want to sell the product for. Not even your list price necessarily, but what the actual price that you expect it to be sold for in retail is. And all I'm suggesting is that rather than assume that your first customers and your first 100 customers and customers say 2,000 to 2,100 are going to pay the same price. Your first customers are the hardest ones to get, and therefore it's worthwhile to have an incentive for them to pay a lower price. I don't look at it as a discount necessarily. I look at it as part of your pricing strategy, that your earlier customers pay less. Frankly, it's sort of fair that they pay less because you're holding their money longer, actually. And basically build up, what's that?
You are holding them longer, not us.
No, we only hold it for a little while. That's part of the beauty of crowdfunding, then you're holding it. Depending on how long it takes to manufacture. So I think it's just important to set a pricing strategy where your price is actually rising throughout your campaign to the price that you ultimately intend to sell it for at retail.
And then either Raggy or Brian, could you help the audience here better understand, so what's the difference between a super extreme early bird and an early bird and an Indiegogo special and all these other prices you may set?
A number on a page. It's you can call your perks whatever you'd like. I think that comes down to marketing and what as David's saying, how you want to manage the pricing strategy for your product.
To add to that, so how we do pricing research is we look at competitors. I mean, if you want to sell a speaker, you're not going to be priced the same as Bose. I mean, people, they won't go for an unknown brand with the same pricing as Bose, for example. So look at your competitors, go to Amazon, net out the pricing of different competitors and try to go below there because it's still crowdfunding.
Great, so to summarize the panel's recommendation here, so the way that you set a price is you benchmark against potential competitors on the market just to understand what your customers might pay. And then throughout the campaign, when you first launch, you set your first sort of early bird as the lowest price you can go, and then throughout the campaign, you continue to increase that price through the perks. So I think that sounds like wise advice. And we're just going to cut the panel here, and we're going to start diving into questions. And for this Q&A section, I've got some of the questions that the audience has answered up here. We're going to have about 5 to 10 minutes for the questions, and then from the panel, we'll just need one panelist to answer each of the questions, just so we can fly through these. We won't be able to get through all of them just due to timing issues, but we'll do our best. So I actually saw several questions around IP protection. A lot of hardware companies are wondering, because I'm launching this early stage, potentially prototype concept product on Indiegogo, I feel like someone else will see this idea, maybe even a big enterprise, and steal my idea. So what do you recommend around IP protection? Dave said that's a great and hard question.
And then Brian and Raggy handed the microphone over to me. And you said you wanted one person to answer each question. I thought you meant Brian. It's a good question. It's a really, really hard question. I think it is worth, I heard mention of one company that helps companies here in China with IP. I think it is a worthwhile expense just to look into, if you think you're actually doing something innovative. And I think it's worth being realistic about that. There are many products that are maybe competitive, but not necessarily innovative. Start by asking yourself that question. If you're really doing something innovative, that's not obvious. Those are the classic patent protection questions. And if you are, then I think it is worth looking into whether you can at least get a provisional patent filed to protect your intellectual property. If you're not, there's really nothing that you can do anyway. You don't have IP that's necessarily protectable. In my experience, actually, what happens, look at, I think a great example was Apple acquiring Beats. It's not that you won't necessarily get, if you're really building great products, the larger companies will actually be more likely, in a lot of cases, to buy you rather than try to squash you. In theory, Apple could have developed their own headphones, but Beats built great products, they built a great brand, and rather than try to compete with them, Apple decided it was more valuable to them to acquire them. So I'd never really think to look at IP protection as the main way to protect the product that you're developing. I think the best way to protect the product that you're developing is to just build a really big and successful business selling that product.
Yeah, I mean, sort of to echo that, like Segway Robotics was a huge company in the United States, originated there, but in terms of operating costs, they weren't able to super effectively manage that, and then they were acquired by Ninebot, who allowed them to proliferate their technology in more products and make it more commercially viable. So I think that's right. Another question here, I think also is a hard but really great question, is that this individual has noticed a lot of large enterprises and big companies using crowdfunding, and this person feels that startups can't compete with big companies on many fronts, especially due to the costs of marketing. So how do you deal with it?
I'll take that question, actually. What's actually amazing about a lot of the large companies on Indiegogo, frankly, the large companies on Indiegogo are using Indiegogo for the same reason that a lot of you are using crowdfunding. They have products that are in their pipeline that might be a new product line for that company, and they're not sure if they want to pursue that product, and they want to investigate it with an early stage audience. And the truth of the matter is, the backers on Indiegogo are not looking for brand names. If they were looking for brand name products, they would go to Amazon. The backers on Indiegogo are looking for innovative products, and the enterprises that are using Indiegogo, and I'm just speaking for Indiegogo because I don't know what's going on this topic on competitor sites. The enterprises that are using Indiegogo, what we're seeing is they're not necessarily any more successful with their campaigns than our innovative entrepreneurs. The most successful campaigns on Indiegogo have primarily come from innovative entrepreneurs that nobody's ever heard of. The largest fundraise on Indiegogo ever was from a father and son team in Australia that raised $13 million for a new beehive, Flow Hive, if anybody picked up that product. But it wasn't a brand name, and they were very successful. I'll also mention that the enterprises that use Indiegogo are not using Indiegogo so much to sell products or to actually compete. They're really using Indiegogo as a way, because they're so used to selling through retail, they're using Indiegogo as a way to connect directly with customers more than they are as a way necessarily to sell products. And so even large companies on Indiegogo will often cap their campaigns at a certain number of perks, just because once they've gotten enough people to engage with, they've done all they want to do, and they're not looking to sell a lot more than that.
Great, and again, I'm going to try to power through more questions here, so let's try to keep the answers shorter. I think that Brian would be a great person to answer this next question. So, a lot of marketing companies are asking hardware startups to invest a ton of money into PR and big marketing in order to make crowdfunding successful. And this person thinks that this defeats the philosophy of crowdfunding. So what would your opinion be around spending a lot of money for PR, marketing, and paid advertising just for crowdfunding?
I think it's up to the campaign. It really depends how you want to run your company. I mean, there are lots of ways to succeed. Some people have exceptional products, some people have innovative products, some people have innovative marketing. So I don't think there's anything wrong with budgeting for your campaign that way, if that's what you want to do.
Great. This question is very pointed toward Raggy. So this person is asking, what do you think about low-cost 3D printers for the US and European markets?
I haven't seen a prototype yet, but how I would test it is basically set up a landing page, put $100, $200 on Facebook advertising, and see how the people react.
Perfect. Question for David. Does Indiegogo have any direct relationships with accelerators? If yes, how did the accelerator create a relationship with you?
I'm right here. Which accelerator is that? We do work informally with a number of accelerators. Indiegogo is always looking for great entities to partner with to help entrepreneurs bring their products to life. And if there are accelerators here that would like to engage in some way with Indiegogo, I'd be happy to talk to you.
Great, and a lot of the questions here are very focused on specific project ideas you have, so you're welcome to approach our team. Jean and Alicia, if you could raise your hands. So this is our team headquartered here in Shenzhen, and they are more than happy to host office hours and talk through your entire idea for as much time as you need in order to figure out how to help you.
Sandy, can you remind everybody where they're located here in Shenzhen?
Yes, so they actually are based in this office building. They're just right outside the door there, so they will host office hours. If you want to get in touch with them, you can, approach our team after this event and scan their WeChat code and get in touch.
We're hoping to get a lease so that they don't have to be located just outside the door. They're actually here.
Great, so I think we went a little bit over, and that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much to our panelists for all the insights you shared around crowdfunding, cross-border, and hardware.